In a small Korean province in 1986, two detectives struggle with a case of multiple young women being found raped and murdered by an unknown killer. Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. I am here today to share with you all my spoiler-free review for the 2003 South Korean crime drama film, Memories of Murder. I am so excited to let you all know what I thought about this film, and if you should check it out in this non-spoiler review. Before we dive into it, as you can see on the screen now, make sure you're following me on all my other social media accounts. That way, you all can stay up to date on what's going on over here at Movie Files. If you are new to this channel, Movie Files, welcome. Make sure you guys subscribe, and while you're at it, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my other movie reviews, TV coverage, live streams, and all the fun things we do on this very channel. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Really helps out the channel, but I also really appreciate it. And in the comments, if you have seen this film, I want to know what you thought of this film. Some people call this a masterpiece. If you haven't seen the film, I want to know if you guys are interested in checking it out. Let's have a discussion in the comments below. So, just a quick little, why are you reviewing this movie? Came out 17 years ago. Well, just recently, Neon sent out a press release screening saying that on October 19th and October 20th, they will be playing this movie in a limited theatrical run. They digitally remastered the film and will be available on digital, I believe, October 27th. So once I got that email, I said, let me check this out because I've heard so many great things about it. And I'm here today to let you all know what I thought about this film that some claim to be a modern masterpiece. I want to get into it in this review, starting off with a little background about this film. So first and foremost, this is the second feature film by the incredible director Bong Joon-ho. Now, this film was adapted from a 1996 stage play about the same subject matter, and this film is also loosely based on true events. The films earned critical acclaim for its cinematography, the film's editing, the musical score, the direction, the performances, the screenplay, and is highly regarded as one of the finest films ever made. Now, 17 years after its initial release and a year after the real killer was identified, this cult classic takes its place as a modern masterpiece. Now, this is a first-time watch for me personally, and when you hear the words masterpiece and cult classic, you go into a film with a certain lens, right? Especially coming off of Bong Joon-ho last year, just sweeping the Oscars with Best Picture, Best Director. So I was beyond excited to see what this project was all about, knowing that this is his second film that he ever released, and I'm just a big fan of his work altogether. So starting this review off with the positive, starting off with the pacing in the story, again, no spoilers. I found this film to have such a great build-up. At the start of the film, you're introduced to our lead character played by Song Kang Ho, Detective Park, who's in charge in solving these murders that took place in 1986, where the film opens where you find two women have been found raped and murdered in a ditch. Now, you can clearly see Detective Parks has never handled a case so serious before, and he is so overwhelmed by this case. It is so interesting to see how this film starts off, where you meet him and his partner and how unorthodox their methods are in figuring out cases. You have Park, who can just look in the criminals or in the suspect's eyes to see if they're guilty or not, and then his partner takes things into his own hands by roughing up the suspect. So definitely methods are definitely unorthodox, to say the least. You get a chance to see kind of the world building within this film, especially when it comes to this small Providence town where they've never had anything like this. This to them was like the Zodiac Killer. This was like Jack the Ripper, and just seeing how the town handled these murders. What I really liked about this film is how it starts off in its first act and how it displays how this particular police department is not equipped to handle such crimes of this capacity. For example, you have the forensic team that shows up late to the crime scene. You have the people of the town coming to the crime scene, laughing and playing, stepping on the evidence. So again, you can see that they're not prepared for a case of this capacity. Kind of transition into my thoughts on the second and third act. This is where we meet Detective Seo, who is the more experienced detective coming from Seoul, who volunteers to help Detective Park. Within this second act, you see this kind of rivalry, you see this competition between Detective Park and Detective Seo, and how they go about figuring out this crime in two completely different ways. And again, Detective Seo coming from a more prestigious police department versus Detective Park, who coming from a more kind of lackadaisical, not as detailed police police department. It's just really interesting to see those two characters clash and how they go about handling their business. And to me, that's where Bong Joon-ho's sense of humor gets ejected within this film, and it never loses its seriousness, or does it lose its compelling nature of the story. And to me, the second and third act of this movie is just excellence at its finest. You see the crimes getting more violent. We're getting more clues. You get more of that Zodiac vibe when you're seeing Detective Parker and Detective Seo relationship develop, and they get more into the almost horrific nature of this story. Now, of course, without going into spoilers, I thought the conclusion of this film was very satisfying. Now, going into my thoughts on the performances, I thought for the most part the supporting characters were fine. We'll talk about them a little bit later, but definitely the standouts were Detective Seo and Detective Park, and it is so easy to see why director Bong Joon-ho and his favorite actor Song Kang Ho have worked together, I believe 6 times now, because they just have that chemistry between a director and actor. I think of Scorsese and De Niro, Scorsese, DiCaprio, Hanks and Spielberg, Tarantino and Jackson. They just have that chemistry. They work so well together. But going back to Detective Park's journey, seeing him question his own methods of solving this crime and coming to grips with this crime and how it has shaken up this town was just such a beautiful journey to watch on screen. And in the same vein, and going to Kim's character, his arc, being this younger detective, being this kind of hotshot, coming from this big town, having had dealt with crimes like this on a much larger scale, but then coming to a smaller Providence where people are more connected and know everything about each other, seeing his journey and his path, discovering the killer and getting closer to the people of the community, and increasingly becoming more of a person being filled with anger and willing to go over the line once he finds his killer. I thought, again, Seo and Park were just great characters, and they had a great character arc. Now, wrapping up the positives with the man of the hour, the man, the myth, the legend, Bong Joon-ho. This, to me, shows why he is the best, in one of the best directors working today. The way he crafts his shots in the film, the incredible pacing, his sense of humor, his character development, creating the sense of dread and fear and hopelessness was such a masterful job within this film. And you know, something I noticed between, not comparing the two, but thinking of Parasite in this film, you know, all his films have a sense of humor. And I thought, just thinking of Parasite, how we have this kind of more lighthearted, more comedic first half, and then we transition into like a thriller horror film in Parasite. This film has kind of that same pacing, where the first half is a little bit more of that world building, there's a little bit more jokes involved, and then we transition into the more horrific crimes. The transition from the genres, for me, works so much more organically within this film. And not that Parasite did it bad, it was just more shocking in Parasite, but I thought this film was a little bit more organic, from handing from one genre to the next genre. So finishing this review off with my criticisms, my final thoughts, I thought that, I mentioned it briefly, but the supporting characters were just fine in this movie. I'm thinking of the head of the police department. Some of the supporting characters were kind of one-dimensional, kind of one note, and really didn't add that much to the story for me personally, which brings me into Park's love interest, who there's a particular part in this film I won't get into that she's involved with. If we would have spent a little bit more time with that character, I feel like that moment would have been more impactful for me, which also makes me think of the consequences that our detectives do to get the information from the suspects. I wish there were a little bit more higher stakes in what they do to those suspects. But overall, guys, before I get into my score here, make sure you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my other videos. But closing thoughts. After a first watch, I wouldn't personally say this is a masterpiece, but I can see why people say that, and maybe on a rewatch, that opinion may change. But just overall thoughts of this film, it is a compelling movie, and once you hit that second act, the film never lets you go. And seeing a young Bong Joon-ho flexing his directing muscles in this film was such a beautiful thing to watch. I'm going to give this film a 4.5 out of 5. I will say I did look up what really happened and also how they found this killer. It is very chilling. So that's my thoughts on Mysteries of Murder. I highly recommend you all check it out when it is available on digital release October 27th. And if you are one of those lucky states that has it at your local theater or drive-ins October 20th and October 19th, check it out. And when you do, let me know what you all thought about the film. Like I said, make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Make sure you hit that bell so you don't miss any of my other content. Thank you all for watching this review. Stay safe, and we'll see you all on the next video.